This is Paperback here with me, Jane the Book Chick on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM. Well, it's an exclusive author conversation this hour on the show, and we have Mr. PR Ganapathy. He has been out with his new book. It's called The Anza Deception. It's been published by Hachette. It's out on the shelves October, November, just this year, and it's his first book. It is a spy thriller in India, Pakistan, and China. A very good afternoon, and welcome to the show, Mr. Ganapathy.
Thanks a lot.
How are you doing today?
Doing great.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me, what is your story with Chennai? How long have you been here? What's your tryst with the city?
Well, I've been here about two and a half years now. I moved back from the US about 2.5 years ago, moved to Chennai. First time living in this city, although I'm originally Tamilian. I have a lot of family here. I've been here for holidays and things like that, but first time living here, and I'm thoroughly enjoying every moment of it. So it's a really great place to be.
Alright, so what caused that shift from the US to Chennai?
Oh, well, I'd been there for a while. Wanted to be back in country, back home. Also wanted to make a career shift towards doing something with impact, and the opportunity presented itself to come back here, and that's why I moved back.
Alright, so the impact that you're talking about, is it to do with an NGO? Is it to do with helping people?
Yeah, so I do multiple things. I am a senior advisor for Teach for India, where I help them set up their operations in Chennai and guide them and advise them on various things. Teach for India, as you know, is a movement to get the best and brightest to teach in some of our poorest schools. I also am the Chief Operating Officer at Wilgrow, which is a non-profit that funds entrepreneurs with products or services that help the poor. And so I help them develop their business plans, raise money, fund them, and mentor them through their entrepreneurial journey. It's a really great movement because you have some of our best and brightest engineers and doctors applying their minds to create really innovative products and services that help the poor, and it's deeply satisfying to be able to help them and support them.
And what is that one standalone product that stands out and you say that you're proud to be associated with something like that helps the community and that has helped growth overall? Yeah,
so I can't pick a single one because they're all really very dear to me, but if I had to choose, I might choose an anemia screening device that we've funded. This group of doctors and engineers who were traumatized by the loss of a patient on the delivery table. Anemia is the single largest cause of death during pregnancy, and 60% of South Asian women are anemic. And this is a simple device that plugs onto your finger and tells the woman whether she's anemic or not. And the solution is a really cheap iron tablet. And so it's a great product that will significantly reduce deaths during pregnancy and make women a lot more aware of their anemic condition. So if I had to pick one, I'd pick that one. But all of our companies are really great ideas.
All right, so it's great ideas that are actually going out there and helping the community in India, overall communities across all strata, right?
That's right, yes. It's really focused on the poor, so especially the rural poor, but across the country, everywhere, we fund ideas and products that help the people.
Alright, they fund ideas, but on the other side, we're going to find out about what funded this idea of a book. It's called The Anza Deception, and yes, it's the first book that Mr. PR Ganapathy is out with. So on the other side, we'll talk about the book. Stay tuned. This is Paperback. You're with me, Jane the Book Chick on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM, in conversation with Mr. PR Ganapathy. He is a man of multiple talents. He associates himself with Teach for India. He associates himself with Wilgrow. And of course, he's the author of the book, The Anza Deception, which is out on the bookshelves October, November this year. And I haven't picked a copy yet. I'm going to go read it in just a little bit. But it's a preview on the show right here. And we have the author live in the flesh. So tell us, sir, where did the idea of this book start? You're all about ideas. Wilgrow is all about ideas for the rural poor. So where did this idea for the book start?
Well, I don't know if there was any one defining moment when this happened. These things kind of just bubble around in the head and they begin to coalesce into something that then finds its way to paper. I think sometime about 4 or 5 years ago in the US, just watching Syriana the movie, and then there was a TV serial by David Simon called The Wire, which was a really fascinating story about the underground in Baltimore. And some of these ideas begin to come together, that there are a lot of people who really benefit when countries have tension between each other. People who dislike the idea of peace because they stand to lose a lot from it. And so I wrote the outline. This idea was of a Secret Service agent who's trying to mess with another country by doing something, and then something backfires somewhere. And that's really how the Anza Deception began to come together. The plot kind of winds around where you find a lot of disparate characters who stand to actually benefit a lot when there is tension, when there is terrorism, and they don't want it's set in an era of peace in the future. I've imagined an era of peace, and I imagine these people working behind the scenes to destroy that peace because they stand to lose a lot from it. And so that's how the initial idea came together, and then wrote the outline. Took a break from work for a while to meditate and generally spend time on things that gave me meaning, and at that time pulled out that outline and then actually began to write it, and it's been well received, thankfully.
Alright, a spy thriller in India. Do you think you already have people clamoring at your doorstep for it to be made into a movie, to buy the film rights?
Well, I've started conversations and I hope somebody picks it up, because it is a fascinating, complex story. It's not a simple one. There are no straightforward black and white characters. There are a lot of grey. Everybody is slightly good, slightly bad. Everybody has their own agenda. And, I think it'll make a great movie if it were to come out. It'll be very thought-provoking. I think it'll get people to stop and think about issues such as, why is India and Pakistan, at each other's throats like this? And why are we spending such a significant portion of our GDP on defense and defense issues? Or who goes to work in the armed forces anymore? Or who goes to work in government anymore? Are our best and brightest minds really, serving the country through a career in politics or in government or in the armed forces? Things like that too. And that was really the intention, is to excite a person, get them into those shoes of the story, but at the same time get them to think about these deeper issues and, raise the national dialogue and conversation about some of these things.
Fantastic. On the other side, we're going to dig a little deeper and find out about some of the protagonists in the book. He said that, no shades of complete black or white. It's always grey. That is what you actually see in a spy thriller. So we're going to dig a little deeper, find a little bit more on the other side. Stay tuned. This is Paperback here with me, Jane the Book Check on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM, in conversation with Mr. PR Ganapathy. He is the author of the Anza Deception, and yes, it's been an interesting conversation thus far. We've been talking about what the idea of the book was all about, where it originated, and the man has thought a lot about the book and has actually got it on paper. But let's, like we said some time back, dig a little deeper, find out about the plot of the book and the protagonists in the book. So tell us about some of the characters.
In the book is this Kargil hero, Major Anwar Islam. He was with the Rajputana Rifles and saw action at this very difficult battle which actually took place, the battle for Toluling Top. And he follows his former commanding officer into the Research and Analysis Wing, the RAW, which is India's CIA. And he's posted in Islamabad, where he's the station chief there, looking after parts of northern Pakistan. And he has an informer who tells him that the Pakistani army is smuggling some Anza missiles. The Anza is a Pakistani shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missile, and those missiles are being smuggled to the Taliban. And our intrepid hero, gets a gang of Pathans together, and he intercepts those missiles. And when he intercepts those missiles, some mandarins in South Bloc, that's the diplomats, want to play a game with the Chinese, and so they ask him to give those missiles to Uyghur terrorists. The Uyghurs are Muslims in the Xinjiang province of China. They've been suppressed or repressed by the communist regime in China, so they're fighting for their self-determination. And so they tell him to send some of those missiles to the Uyghurs, and he goes and gives it to the Uyghurs. The intention is that when a Pakistani missile is used on a Chinese plane, the Chinese will get pissed off with the Pakistanis, and that will, cause a fracture in that relationship. So this was the calculation. But then things go wrong because the Uyghurs sell that to somebody else who uses somebody to smuggle that into India. And so you've got terrorists who get that into the country and then potentially, could bring down civilian airliners, and that could be India's own 9/11. But behind the scenes, there's a secret cabal of retired and serving generals and police officers that is kind of hatching a fairly sinister plot to, shake the country out of its complacency. And all our young Anwar Islam can do is rely on a young bureaucrat in the foreign ministry, in the Prime Minister's office, Mohit Varghese. and Vishal Karandikar, who's again a crackerjack IIT graduate who decided to join the Indian Police Service. So he's a police officer, and the three of them must get together to kind of avert India's own 9/11, and the plot really gets quite exciting as they begin to, as it reaches the denouement towards the end. And then it has a surprise ending, a real sting in the tail. And I've had people who've not liked that ending, but at the end of the day, that's the way I wanted to write it, and so that's the way I wrote it. But it has, everybody's read it. It's shaken them up a little bit and had them, thinking at the end of it. And some of them have, resisted the urge to call me at 2 a.m. to shout at me for the way in which the plot ends at the end.
Alright, so it is a cliffhanger of an ending, a sting in the tail is what he says, but that was a very, very interesting plot. On the other side, we're gonna find out how much of this book has been inspired by international television, especially Hollywood, and with so much of a plot that revolves around things that you generally see in movies abroad. Let's find out how much of that has eaten its way into this book. Stay tuned. This is the Hop Mama House. You're with me, Hop Mama Jane, on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM. Now, Indians as a nationality, as a set of people, we actually love to watch spy movies, right from the Bond movies to the Bond series. Anything that has to do with spy thrillers, we really enjoy. And, when we have that as a staple food in terms of movies, why not have a homegrown author writing a book that has to do with India, Pakistan, and China? And we heard about the plot sometime back. The book is called The Anza Deception. But we're going to find out from the author, who is based in the US for a long time, as to how much of it came from movies in Hollywood that, thrive on such political thrillers and action sequels. Go ahead, sir.
Well, that's a good question. When I initially wrote the outline, it was actually set between Iraq, Iran, the Chechens, the Hezbollah, Serbian terrorists smuggling these missiles into the United States. But then when I moved to India and I rewrote that outline for the Indian context, it was surprising to see how easily it translated to the same sorts of players we have in this country.
So do you think that players across the world have this unanimous way of working?
Well, I think there are elements, that are common to some of these interest groups. There's the same sorts of motivators or drivers that drive people's behavior.
What are these basic motivators?
Well, I think each one, passionately believes in a certain point of view or a certain cause. Sometimes, of course, it's, monetary and they're in it for the money. But quite often there will be people who, and, for example, that secret cabal that I was talking about. And, you have these things called the neocons in the United States who believe in a strong national defense and so on and so forth. And we have people like that in this country. And my father was a senior Air Force officer, and I know that, some of his colleagues believed that, India must have a very strong national defense position and that we've been too weak with the Pakistanis and so on and so forth. So we have similar players in this country too. I think you have the mafia. Mafia, when you look at what's been happening with terrorism, you ask yourself, has the police enough resources to be also, able to keep the country safe from terrorist attack and go after organized crime? I would say perhaps not. I mean, when you see the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu going to the airport, you see hordes of policemen lined on both sides of the road, whereas I think those policemen could be much better employed in actually pursuing crime and stopping rape and so on and so forth. So you begin to ask yourself some of these questions. These are themes that are common to the US, they're common to India. The FBI doesn't take up a case unless it's terrorism related, especially in the aftermath of 9/11. I'm sure we have something like that after 26/11. We probably were obsessed about terrorism and terrorism-related cases, and we probably gave the mafia a free pass. So that's why, when I translated that outline and applied that to the South Asian subcontinent, I found a lot of the themes and the players very similar to what you find anywhere else in the world. And so, it's not that different.
It's not that different. It's a powerful struggle. No, a struggle for power, a struggle for money, a struggle for supremacy. That's where, the common thread lies. But we still haven't gotten the answer about the movies and books that have inspired you to become an author that you have. But that's all coming up on the other side. Stay tuned. This is Paperback here with me, Jane the Book Chick on Chennai Live 104.8 FM. Well, it's a spy thriller. It's called The Anza Deception. I'm sure it's going to come out as a movie because it's a very well thought out, very intelligent book with a cliffhanger of an end. Sting in a tail is what the author says. PR Ganapathy is sitting right here across us in conversation with us. Hachette is the publisher of this book. It's out on the shelves. So for all you boys and girls out there who really like spy thrillers and have had your regular dose of it internationally, here's a national spy thriller, India, Pakistan, China, set around there, and it has to do with the Anza missiles, is what PR Ganapathy told us. But Ganapathy, tell us about some of the books and the movies that you've, grown on, your staple diet of books and films that have made you explore this genre of spy thrillers.
A real sucker for anything that's remotely concerned with the military. So I'll watch a lot of, World War movies on Vietnam, so that's anything that has anybody in uniform. I watched Top Gun about 12 times, I think. My dad was a fighter pilot, so I grew up on that sort of stuff. I grew up on bases around India, and the smell of burnt aviation turbine fuel is something that gives me a high.
How come you never entered the services?
I would have. We had a bereavement in the family, and then I changed tracks. But I, wrote the exam. I came first in the All India merit list for all the services, and I was all set to, follow my dad's footsteps. But then something else intervened, and sometimes, these things are the way they are. But
any regrets there?
Of course, yeah. I wish I would have been a fighter pilot, but then things change. After that, I got glasses. I may have been a grounded, frustrated fighter pilot. So sometimes you have to let go of these things. You have to realize that these things happen. You have to take the rough with the smooth, and enjoy the journey. If you obsess too much about the past, or think about or fear too much about the future, you're not going to be happy. Happiness comes from enjoying the moment, and so
it lies right there in the present, right?
Right there in the present.
All right. So tell us about some of the films that you've watched. Names of films or names of books that you've read that have gone around the whole spy thriller scene.
Yeah, there's I was a big fan of this author called John Masters. He's an officer in the Gurkha Rifles. So part of his books are autobiographical, and then he's also, written a number of books set in the Indian subcontinent about terrorism and things like that. Very, very fascinating style of writing, and of course his love for the Gurkhas and for India really comes through from his books. I'm a big fan. But of the movies, I don't know if you remember a movie called Peacemaker, which is about this nuclear bomb that's detonated in New York City. Very complex plot, keeps changing around, and then it has quite an unusual ending at the very end. And so movies like that really, attract me. Movies that, you're never quite sure how things are going to turn out, and who's the right guy, and who's messing with you. And that's really part of what I've brought out in this book.
Do you think that homegrown Indian spy thriller movies, the new ones like Agent Vinod and Dawn, do you think they're even anywhere close to what the real scene actually looks like?
Well, to be honest, I don't know why we seem to take essentially good ideas to begin with, and then after that put a lot of it's masala in it, and then the original vegetables or meat or whatever it is has lost its presence in the dish, and that's really the tragedy. Once you throw in the songs and the love sequence and things like that, you've kind of lost the whole essence of the plot. I really liked that movie Wednesday, because it stuck to the complex terrorist related theme that it started out with. It didn't get distracted with the masala. I'm not sure how much of a commercial success it was, but it was a fantastic movie to watch for a thinking person. I think we don't have enough movies like that, and it's really unfortunate. So if this gets made into a movie, I'm fairly certain it's not going to contain a lot of that masala, if I can have any say in it.
Alright, on the other side, we're going to find that who he thinks should play roles of the protagonist in his book if the movie ever comes out, which I'm sure it will, because there's a lot of the thinking populace that wants to watch good Indian films because we go to Hollywood for them, and when we have homegrown talent, we know that we have the stuff. Why not? So all that coming up on the other side. Stay tuned. This is Paperback. You're with me, Jane the Book Chick on Chennai Live 104.8 FM, talking to PR Ganapathy, the author of The Anza Deception. This is a book published by Hachette. It's a spy thriller, and it's one of those real thinking thrillers that don't have the masala. It actually is about real stuff, really researched. A lot of effort has been put in. Mr. Ganapathy, how many years did you actually spend thinking about the book?
Well, again, it's been 4-5 years that I've been thinking about the book off and on. But when I actually got down to writing it, it was fairly fast. It took about 2.5 months to actually write the book. And then, of course, polish it for about a month or so after that.
Wow, so the writing process was not more than 3.5 to 4 months?
It didn't take more than that, yeah.
All right. Was the thinking that took more?
The outline, and then as you're writing specific portions, you begin to flesh out the detail and think through how a specific event will pan out and what's realistic and what's not. And then you look at the flow and things like that.
If you're not really from the military background, how could you be a successful spy thriller writer?
I don't know. So, my exposure to the military because of my father's 39 years service and all the, I've had lots of school friends who went into the military and some of them are still there. So, you hang around with these guys and you begin to absorb some of their style and their way of thinking and their way of working, their way of talking and things like that.
So you don't have to be a fighter pilot to actually write a fighter pilot scene?
Well, I'm a pilot, and so I have a pilot's license. I owned a plane for a while. There is actually some aviation-related scenes in the book, and those come from my personal experience, and of course, exposure to that that domain. So it wasn't that difficult to put it together. What was also fascinating is how much you can sit in your in the comfort of your own bedroom, and today because of the power of Google Images or something like that, you can actually see what a place looks like. And so I describe Kashgar without ever having been there, just from the plethora of photographs that you can find of the various bazaars and tea shops and so on and so forth in that part of China. Or I describe the Kunjara Pass, which is where the Karakoram highway crosses over from Pakistan into China, and that octagonal Chinese post. It's all tons of images that you can find about these things. So it's quite amazing to see how, if you apply your mind to the research, you can find a lot of material that you can then process, digest, and then use in your book. It wasn't that difficult actually researching it as it might have been in the past.
Fantastic. So you're saying that research was easy because everything is available on the web these days. So as long as you have an outline in your head and you have the passion, the interest, and the penchant, putting together something like a spy thriller which is true to its genre and not escaping it with masala and all of that other thing is actually possible. Very, very possible.
I think it definitely is. It's not that difficult. It just requires you to spend some time searching through stuff, making sense of it, and then incorporating that into the book.
And were you worried about naysayers who said how can you write something like this? What's the truth to it? How much of it is fiction? What do you have to say to them?
Well, I say, it is a work of fiction, and so the objective of the work of fiction is to have you, get lost in this world of make-believe, and then after you're done with the book, to think back and, look at where you've been and see whether that's provoked you to think differently about something. And that's really my objective, and the benefit of fiction is that I don't have to be absolutely precise about the truth, although I have tried to be as factual as possible. But the intention is really to put people in a place where the others wouldn't have gone, and to get them to think about things that the others aren't thinking about. And that's really what motivates me to write.
And how much of history is there in this book?
There is a fair amount of history and commentary on how Kashmir was taken by India in 1948, and some of that background, something about the China operations in 1962 when we got our backsides kicked by the Chinese and so on and so forth. So I do weave some of that into it because I think they are relevant to the mindset of some of the protagonists in the book, and also that's my way of kind of bringing some of those issues to the fore and getting people to think about it.
So how much of your book is fact and fiction if you were to split it up? 60-40?
I don't know. The description of the places, the scenes, the technologies, all of that is absolutely accurate. But what's done with that, and some of that is fiction.
So
obviously,
what would the split be?
I'd say about 60% fact, 40% fiction.
All right, yeah. And that you think is a good enough percentage to play around with the human mind?
Who's
probably. Reading?
Yeah. So you take very realistic things and you imagine them in situations where it hasn't happened yet, thankfully, but where it could potentially happen, and that's the way you get people to think out of the box.
All right, super cool. On the other side, we're actually going to talk about that movie and how that movie is going to shape out when it does. At least his wish list, the author's wish list for the film when it does come out. Stay tuned. Lots more coming up. This is Paperback here with me, Jane the Book Check on Chennai Live 104.8 FM. This is Paperback. You're with me, Jane the Book Check on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM, and talking to Mr. PR Ganapathy, the author of the Anza Deception. It's out there on the shelves, published by Hachette, out in November this year. And yes, the film is something that I think will come out based on the book very shortly, because it's a book which is a spy thriller. That's exactly what it is. And this time around, very, very well researched with an author who comes from a military background. In fact, he himself is a pilot, and he wanted to be a fighter pilot. So there's a lot of realism, there's a lot of actual research and actual technical know-how, about the subject that the author actually has, and a very interesting combination of fact and fiction. 60% of it is fact, 40% he says is conjured imagination, and he hopes it does not happen, what actually is bound to happen in the book, but it's still something that he's thought about. And there's a lot to the book that a lot of guys and girls who like spy thrillers will actually enjoy. So tell us, sir, this book is almost a ready-made recipe for a film. So tell us about the film. Who do you think should direct it? Who do you think should play a protagonist? And what would be your ideal dream list?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I thought the there are three key characters. The policeman Karandikar. I would imagine, someone like an Irfan Khan probably playing that role. There's this strong bureaucrat. She's an IFS officer in the Prime Minister's office, Mohini Varghese. I could see a Konkana Sen Sharma playing that role.
All right.
And then there's Major Anwar Islam, and I think I'd like to see somebody like an Amir Khan probably play that role. So,
wow, that's a nice dream list. And would you want this to be directed by a Hollywood director or somebody from India?
That's a good question. As long as they don't, whoever did Wednesday, and
Anurag Kashyap, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Yes.
I think he did an awesome job. I'd love for someone like him to do it, because I think he'd bring just the right, combination of seriousness, technical ability, to really do a good job of converting this into a movie.
All right. And if it was a Hollywood director, who would it be? Would it be an Ang Lee? Because we just saw Life of Pi.
Yeah, no, there may be some special effects, but I'm still not sure. Yeah, I don't think I have a specific name on who I'd like to do it if it was Hollywood.
As long as somebody is able to capture the real spirit of the book without, completely compromising on the plot with all of the Indian masala that usually gets added, you think it would make a perfect film?
I think it might make a good film, yeah.
All right.
It's a sort of film I'd like to watch.
Yeah, Amir Khan, Irfan Pathan, Konkana Sen. That sounds like a stellar cast that would be there. And that would be fantastic. You'd be writing more really, really interesting screenplays after that, right?
Probably. I've just finished the second work. Some of the characters have been repurposed.
And what is the second book called?
That's more political thriller. It has a working title, A Sympathy Wave, but it's about politics and what some people do to.
Is this Indian politics we're talking about?
It is Indian politics.
All right.
Some of the characters are probably recognizable. So.
Fantastic. So it's not a work of fiction completely.
Well, no, it's not a complete work of fiction. Obviously, it's like my previous one. It has a lot of fact, and then it's I've taken the writer's leap of faith, of imagination, and after that conjured up an interesting situation that could very well come true, but is a little scary when you think about it. So.
All right. So it's a political thriller, the second book, and it's going to be out soon. But this one is called The Anza Deception. I'm waiting to get my hands on it. On the other side, it's a wrap on the show, so stick around for that. This is Paperback. You're with me, Jane the Book Check on Chennai Live, 104.8 FM. A very interesting conversation with Mr. PR Ganapathy, author of The Anza Deception. It's a book that was published by Hachette, and sometime back we had the author tell us about his dream list if the book, actually becomes a film, and it has the perfect recipe for a great Indian spy thriller. Films that we haven't really seen, except maybe for a film like Wednesday. So maybe this film will actually see the light of day in some time, and it had a very interesting dream cast of Irfan Khan, Amir Khan, and Konkana Sen for the book. So overall, I do wish the author all the best in all his future endeavors. His second book is going to be coming out. What are your last few words to the listeners of Chennai Live?
Well, go out and read the book. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm quite active on Facebook and Twitter, and also on my own website, prganapathy.com. And so I'd love to, hear people's feedback and, see how they liked it and things like that, because I think that's the sort of two-way conversation that keeps me going. And it's people who've come back to me with, specific views on how the book turned out and how it moved them. That's really, kept me motivated to go write the second book and so on and so forth. So I'd just love to hear from people who read the book. And thanks a billion for having me on your show. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolute pleasure. And I'm sure when the film goes out, we get premium passes. And the book, I really do wish it all the success. I'm sure it's going to become a bestseller. Indians love spy thrillers. What are the specific marketing campaigns that you have for the book?
Well, we haven't done very much, so we've kind of put it out there to see how it succeeds. And I think
you want it to be a viral word of mouth kind of a publicity for the book?
I like people to read it, enjoy it, tell their friends about it. I think that's the way people probably pick up books today. I don't think there are other activities that get them to do it. Of course, about 100 journalists have the book in their hands, and your copy is probably on its way, and and they're getting the word out there, and I think that's how some of that groundswell of support for the book will probably build. But everyone who's read it so far has had very good things to say about it, so hopefully that will continue. And so,
Alright, so political thrillers, military thrillers, spy thrillers, these are the kind of books that you want to write. Do you think that there's a lot of fodder for fiction in India with the Indian subcontinent and the South Asian subcontinent, the whole area is concerned? Do you think that we have enough fodder for writing?
Yeah, I think we definitely do. You turn anywhere and you find there's a lot of politics and intrigue and really cloak and dagger stuff that's going on. I'd love to write in the future about the Maoist problem. I was in a previous life closely associated with the Assam Alpha problem. I actually went to Bangkok to negotiate with the Alpha chief on
is this something that you're talking about seriously?
Yeah,
like a previous life?
No, when I was with Tarati,
right.
we had ransom demand on our managers, and we had to go and negotiate with the Alpha. And so, the Assam problem and how the ISI supports the terrorists that are operating in that part of the country. So wherever you turn in our country, you do find some of this stuff going on, and one can pick up that theme and then create something really interesting out of it. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on in our subcontinent that
is interesting enough to write fiction about.
Right here in Chennai, the LTT, Mr. Gandhi's assassination, and so on and so forth. Stuff that is just ready-made for an author like me, perhaps.
Alright, so all the best, sir. And before you go, one last shout out to anybody listening in from your family or from your friends.
Well, my mom and dad, my wife and son, just big hello to all of them, and then to all my friends and who helped me with this book, gave me feedback and things like that. Just thanks a million.
Alright, thank you so much for being in the studio as well. I will meet you next week with yet another popular author right here on the show. But for now, stay tuned. Lots more music coming up. This is Paperback. You're with me, Jane, on Chennai Live 104.8 FM.